All right, it is time for the May wrap-up. If you couldn't tell from the thumbnail, I am unimpressed, aggressively unimpressed with what happened with this reading month. I read 9 books. They were mostly just fine. I think the average rating of this month is probably not reflecting how aggressively meh it was to me. 4 of the 9 books I read are 3.5 stars. I think 2 of them are 4 stars, and then the other 3 are like 4.5 to 5 star area. And I don't know, and especially because the 4.5 to 5 star, my 2 favorites of the month are only 600 pages of my entire reading, and that just makes me so sad. And I don't know, I look at these and I think, well, when should I have DNF'd? And some of them I pushed through because I didn't want to DNF them. They were obligation reads. They were like for book clubs that I was moderating. And then one of them is just like, I wanted to DNF, but I couldn't quite pull a Jashana and DNF when I was so close to the end of a trilogy. I'm just like, well, I made it this far. I need to finish. I can at least make a video on it or something. And yeah, I'm hoping you saw my TBR earlier this week that I have different energy coming into June, because this was just so forgettable that I couldn't even make categories like I normally do for my videos. I was like, how am I grouping these 9 books? I don't even know. I tried for like an hour. I just stared at the books on and off thinking. Normally it takes me like 2 seconds. And so this time we're just going to go in the order in which I read them, because I don't even have different rating opinions enough to go in the order of rating. It's just how aggressively average this reading month is, and not in like a good way. So we're just gonna start. First book of the month I read for my book club, so I could not DNF it. And actually, of all of my average reads of the month, this is the least bothersome to me because of how short it is, and that is Sea of Tranquility. This is fine. This is totally fine. I see why it won the Goodreads Choice Awards, especially because of its broad appeal. I do not know if I will read anything else from this author, just because I felt a clunkiness to the writing style that kind of bothered me, and normally I don't feel clunk when I am reading things. Like, normally writing styles just kind of flow. When I notice a writing style is bad for my brain, it's just like, maybe I just won't go there. And it wasn't horrible, it just felt stilted at times. It was odd. If you don't know, Sea of Tranquility is kind of one of those classic literary works where we're going to have a bunch of point of views, and you're not going to know why you have a bunch of point of views and how they're going to intersect, but you got to trust the book, and it's going to intersect them. And that's kind of the main mystery of the project of the book. My issue, just personally, is I've read 2 other works that play with a lot of things in this book, and I like those 2 other works more for different reasons. And it's hard to talk about those works without maybe spoiling this one. I know a lot of people do talk about that it has time travel qualities. Yeah, it has those in there, but it has another quality that relates to a different book that would maybe spoil that book or this book. I don't know. But the thing I can talk about is that this is obviously an author's reflection on their time in the pandemic, which I already read The Sentence by Louise Erdrich, which is another version of that. And obviously, plenty of people can reflect on their time during the pandemic, and it can be cathartic and it can land for different people. I just really didn't like this version of it because I didn't feel like it was the purpose of the novel. What's really weird is we're set in different time periods and they're all pandemics, and the pandemics don't really play a role in the story. And like, we were discussing this at my local book club about the purpose of the story, and it feels more like the definition of one's reality, and what do you do once you have your own definition, or the definition is changed or thwarted, stuff like that. And what is worth changing, what is worth keeping the same, etc. Nothing really about pandemics or survival were really big parts, but a huge chunk of this book is about this author character that is obviously a stand-in for our author. And it wasn't bad, but it felt out of place. It felt like it should have been its own condensed short story somewhere else. And I think that was one of my issues, is like, I really didn't understand what this book was doing. And if I had liked the writing, maybe it wouldn't have mattered. I don't know. But my book club, we had like 24 people there, and our average rating was a 3. So I feel very confident in my, like, this is a 3.5 star read, but it was short and it was really easy to read. So like, this didn't bother me. I didn't spend a lot of time with it. It didn't take up a large chunk of my reading month. It was good for discussion. Honestly, probably one of the highlights of my reading month, even with this rating. So if that tells you anything. The next book I read was Dragon Keeper, and this was really fun because it's a buddy read that I do with Ben, Grace, and now Stephanie, and I mostly, when I think back on reading this book, because it's, like 30 days ago now, I remember the silly conversations, and that's what I loved. I loved getting to read this with these people. I don't know if I would like this book as much as I do if I read it by myself. if I didn't have this whole banter back and forth with them as we figure out which characters we don't like, the thought experiment of what's going on, you know, discussing our hypotheses of what might happen next. We had this whole discussion where Ben had this one idea of a certain character, and we're like, we do not read that character that way at all, Ben. Tell us more. And it was just a fun time. That's what you want from buddy read experiences. So for that alone, even though this is probably just more of a solid 4-star read for me, it's not very memorable to me. There are certain characters I really like, and I'm excited to get into Dragonhaven soon because I want to see where certain arcs go. But it's definitely not like a new live ship traders for me or anything like that. I wasn't necessarily expecting that, so it's not a letdown, but a fun time. So this is another, like, we started the month off really strong. Like, you know, did I love Sea of Tranquility? No, but we started the month off with a lot of hope. And then I went home for Mother's Day, and I finished 2 books Mother's Day weekend. And one of them was a pretty good time, but I read it under, like, kind of stressful circumstances. And the other one, I think, grew on me, but still, like, wasn't a favorite read. So the first one was Iron Gold. I read this majority in the Logan Airport in Boston because my flight was delayed, like, 4 hours. And I, you know, was really liking this book, and I feel like I thought I didn't like this book when I first read it, and then I went back on my Goodreads, or Storygraph, whatever, and I looked, it's like, oh, I rated this 4.5 stars the last time. And this time I'm giving it 4.5 stars, which probably means it's a little bit more, because my ratings were more inflated in the past. I feel like that's a way for a lot of people, is like your ratings are inflated when you are first rating books, or you don't read as many books. Regardless, I had a really good time with this. I had really enjoyed certain perspectives that I didn't love as much the first time. The side characters are really strong in this. I totally see why a lot of Red Rising fans who love the whole saga really think things step up in this part of the series. I'm just really nervous because I know I liked Iron Gold the first time, and I do not know if I'm going to have same or different opinions when it comes to Dark Age, which you saw on my TBR. So we will see what happens. Also, another cat has joined me. I don't know if I mentioned that I have a cat on the floor who's been mercifully quiet. Sometimes he has to talk, and now I have one in my lap, and if the camera ever gets readjusted, she probably knocked it over. So, Iron Gold, I love the different point of views. I love looking at after a rebellion. That's one of my favorite questions, thought experiments these days, especially when an author really puts a lot of thought into it. I think we have a lot of good perspectives for looking at different points. None of them felt wasted. They all had unique voices, which was only enhanced by the audiobook experience, which is super fun with a full cast. So, I'm excited for Dark Age, a little apprehensive just because, you know, Iron Gold is, I think, it may be my favorite Red Rising book so far. It's really solid. It's like, I think Iron Gold and Red Rising are my 2 favorite Red Rising books, which I know the Red Rising is a hot take one, but I think those are my 2 favorites so far on this reread, with Iron Gold probably being a bit more, because I had more, like, quiet moments and things like that. I think splitting it into multiple perspectives forces it to slow down a little and get those quiet moments that I read books for. And then the book that I finished, which I really wasn't planning to finish, it just kind of happened, is The Sun in the Void. And so I started reading this when we were driving to my grandmother's, who was like 2 hours away. And I'm like, I'm going to give this book 2 or 3 more hours. And if it really doesn't grip me, I have to put it down. I was struggling with this book. And luckily, it did end up gripping me. The second half of this book is way stronger for me than the first half of this book. I still have a lot of issues with it. But I liked it enough at the end that when the sequel comes out, I will pick it up. I have a lot of questions. I like where things are going. I've been more connected. I feel like the clunkiness that I was having issues with is a little smoother by the end and will hopefully remain smooth. My biggest issue, and this probably won't even be a big issue for a lot of people who like action, people who like cool magic systems, people who love epic fantasy, I recommend this to. I'm just not a plot action-driven person. So even though these are some of the best action scenes I've ever read, that's not enough, because my issues were character interactions and character connection. I actually like our 2 main characters. We have Reyna and Ava. They both are ostracized. They're both trying to find their way in this world that has only ever held them back, put them to the side, and they do it in different ways, and they are monstrous in different ways, per se. But at the same time, I didn't really get why they were doing what they were doing, even though it was told to me, but it felt like there were inconsistencies in actions or things that were happening that I wasn't clued in on. And this happened a lot throughout the story. I brought up an example in one of my Friday reads where it felt like, to me, that there was a lot of tension. The stakes are high. There's a lot going on. And then suddenly, even though we're in this high-stakes situation, characters I didn't even know were suddenly friends are, like, frolicking in the ocean together. And it's that type of disjointed thing where I know the author has a strong sense of place, motivation, world building. That all felt like it was consistent to me. I don't think I was let in enough as the reader. But like I said, at times that did seem to improve, so I'm hoping come the next book, that'll be smoothed out a bit. I do love this world, and I love its inspiration on the Colombian, Venezuelan history that is laced through this. It's so cool how it's laced into the magic and the world building and the politics. But I'm a character-driven person, a character interaction-driven person, and that is where this book was a stumbling block for me. So even though I really liked the writing does have some debut qualities to it. Like, for some reason, using a lot of fancy words that I don't think you have to use, but like, the thesaurus was large in this one, and then there were some things that were a little repetitive, but like, all of those things I can forgive. I've read stronger debuts for me, and this one I only ended up finishing because I was really gripped in it by the end. So that's big for me. I'm an endings person, so the fact that this ending landed really well was pretty great. And I was actively like wanting to pick it up. So like, I played a lot of games, hung out with my family, and I was excited for it to be nighttime so I could pick up the book, or excited because people would go shopping so I'd have some downtime so I could pick up the book. So in that sense, even though I can't not give this a 3.5-star rating, this is pretty good. So again, these first 4 books of the month, we're doing pretty okay. And like, I'm generally a positive person, so I'm trying to find the silver linings. But again, we're noticing nothing like super stellar on the horizon. And then we have Leech, which is a really solid sci-fi horror book. Again, only 4 stars. This book kind of did overstay its welcome for me near the end, and since I'm an endings person, I think that's why I'm like struggling to even remember this book now, because the ending kind of just happened. But it's truly a very thrilling gothic book with interesting ideas. I really recommend it during like cold fall season if you're like an atmospheric type reader. And it reminds me of the movie like The Thing. I really enjoyed that, and it reminds me of like post-apocalyptic future sci-fi fantasy stuff too. It's got all of that laced here, and it has a fascinating world and a really good like cadence in its pacing. So each chapter, it has like a cold open that throws you into a flashback scene of something, and then you go back into the main plot. And I didn't even notice the book was doing this till like halfway through, and I really enjoyed that. Because I am world building driven a lot of the times, and those cold opens were always like little nuggets into the world, like longer than an epigraph. Like, we're not talking about like those little chunks you'd get at the beginning of a Mistborn book or something like that. And like, I'm talking like the prose section of the book. It's not italicized or anything. And then we would transition from our main character thinking about that into the current scene. And the main character is fascinating. It's like part of this parasite, and it's going away to see why one of its parts of itself has died and how to prevent that. And it's just got a lot of really unsettling elements. I just think it overstayed its welcome a tad for me. Like, the falling action was a tiny bit too long. And I don't know, I don't think I disliked the ending, but I don't think I loved the ending. And I was hoping to love the ending, because then this could have been like a 4.5, 5-star read. But it really delivered on the unsettling, where is the danger sort of thing you want from it. There's a lot of mystery within the characters and the world that comes to light. It's very dark. I would look into content warnings, because there are some graphic things on page. So especially if you're someone who's like, if it's on page, that's a no from me. I would look into the StoryGraph user-generated content warnings, because, yeah, I would definitely warn people about things like that, because it is horror. Like, some, things are on page, and it's not just the gross things. I mean, it does have some pretty gross descriptions, but it was so cool. I enjoyed the coolness, but I also just wanted the book to end like 50 pages sooner than it did, and it's only a like 300-page book, so. But that's just like where I was, but I'm not a gothic person, and so it's probably it. It was very descriptive and atmospheric, and I personally loved the audio narrator. I know a lot of other people maybe think it's overacted, but I thought it was acted very well, and actually worked really well, especially for the uniqueness of our character. And I actually learned that, this is a trans author, and I think it's a trans narrator as well, and I do love that representation. So this wasn't like a low point, but again, it kind of like missed my expectations. I was having such a good time. It was so intriguing, and it didn't not stick the landing, but it's like it could have landed so much better. So this is an author I'm definitely going to read more from. I'm pretty sure this was a debut, and like, it's really solid for a debut. And now, pretty much, yeah, there's 2 that are the highlights. My highlights of the month are in the second half, and then 2 of the books that I like are really long. And I think that's why they drain on me. Like, the rest of these things I'm talking about are pretty short, or I really like them, and if they're short and meh, whatever. But The Adventures of Amina is pretty long, and it felt long. So this was the Patron Buddy read. I hopefully will have the spoiler vlog up by the time this video is live. And I did not dislike this book, but I did not love this book. I should have stopped this book. And if it wasn't, you know, a patron buddy read, if I already hadn't started the vlog, maybe I would have. But it was also one of those things where it was just short, long enough, you know, it's like long but short, that I was like, I can finish it, but I need to stop doing that. I need to stop. Truly. This is fine. So, Adventures of Amina al-Sarafi. It's an adventure fantasy, and I just know I'm not into adventure fantasy, but this one was at least fun in that I liked getting to know the team and having the team come together. That was enjoyable to me. I felt like everything was pretty well fleshed out. I clearly understood the motivations of everything going on. I just would have rather watched this. That's really all it is this is pretty long for what I would have liked to have spent my time doing it. I would have rather watched the 2.5-hour movie version of this than spend 10 hours reading it, if that makes sense, because I think that's about how much time I spent reading it. And the reason I could tell that is I kept speeding up the audiobook. And that's like my thing, is like I should notice when I keep speeding up the audiobook, not because, you know, I need it to be faster, but because I want to get through it faster. It's like, Angela, that means you should probably stop. It means you do not care. And it's not the book's fault. I actually think it's pretty well paced. I think it does what it wants to do really well. It's an adventure fantasy. I'm just not an adventure fantasy person. But I just didn't, you know, let myself put it down. I just needed to finish it. And I do think that's because it did pick up pace. I do think Shannon Chakraborty is really good at endings of books in terms of making the pace, I don't know, really fly by. I felt that way in almost every single other one of the books I've read by her. But unfortunately, it wasn't like City of Brass or Kingdom of Copper, where I was just like, oh, I love this. And I think part of that is those are not adventure fantasies. Those are more political, cool world building. I mean, this has cool world building too, but this is a book where it feels like a standalone. And I understand what we're going to do in other books, and I probably won't read them because I just don't care, because I, for some reason, did not find fantasy through the adventure lens, and I would rather play a video game or watch the animated movie or watch, I guess, the live action movie, but probably I'd rather have the animated movie. So that was kind of a bummer, but luckily, then that weekend, I had some good stuff. I finished New Sun, so this is a thing I'd been reading all month. So this is probably what made me not notice how average everything else was, because New Suns is stellar. And I was reading it, you know, like a story a day all month, and I loved it. I loved it so much. I think there's like 1, maybe 2 stories I don't love in this collection, and that is ridiculous. And is everything a 5-star story? No, but considering how hard it would be to find a 5-star anthology, like I'm trying to even think what that would look like. Can that exist? Would I want an anthology that is that safe and doesn't take risks? No. And also, just the order in which Nisi Shaw put this together and the way she edited it, it's getting 5 stars. That does not mean everything in this is 5 stars, but it's getting it because I have never read an anthology this strong, and I love short, compact things that know their thematic ideas, and I really, really like it. It's stunning. If you want to know any of my thoughts on any specific stories, I talk about them in like every Friday Reads. My favorite one's the John Chu one, because John Chu is like an author I need to read everything by. But it was great. Even the ones I don't like, I really appreciate. So that's probably the thing that made me not notice that my reading month was kind of just me going through the motions and less being super engaged. Because like I said, everything's just kind of meh. Nothing's bad. Everything's just kind of fine. But I read this book in essentially a day. I guess a day and then 60 pages on another day. But I read the second book in Cordelias Honor, Vorkosigan Saga, Barayar. I'm sorry. You tell me how to pronounce this all the time. Barayar is how I'm going to say it. But this book, I read this essentially in entirety on my Sunday of Memorial Day weekend because I had nothing to do. And I was like, I'm not going to be responsible today. I'm going to read and play Horizon Forbidden West. I'm going to do these 2 things, and I'm going to be happy about it. And I thought for sure, because my attention span is normally pretty short. Like, I read a lot, but that's because I put a lot of time into reading. I think I only average 40 to 50 pages an hour, and the last time I could read an hour straight is when I read this book. Like, it's really not that common. Normally after 30 minutes, my brain needs to go do something else, things like that. So I was fully expecting to be playing the majority of my video game that day and not reading as much, but I read 300 plus pages of that book in that day, which for me is a lot, and it was so cozy and fun, and I just love this author, and I cannot wait to read more. There are so many books I get to read by this author, and I am so joyed. I'm a little bummed because I have a coworker who would love these books, but you can't easily get the ebooks from the library, depending on your library system, because I think of how they're published and stuff like that, and she basically only borrows books from the libraries via ebooks, so I'm gonna like maybe just buy her a bunch of the Kindles, because I think she'll love them. And I don't know, they're not cozy, but they have cozy qualities. Like, you get the quiet moments and action-packed moments, and you get character interactions that make you very invested. And they're high-stakes politics, and it's just such a great time. I don't really know how to describe it, but I can read so many sentences by this author, and I'm already, like, looking at my June TBR. I did not add a book by her on it, and I'm probably going to. Like, I'm just gonna go get Warrior's Apprentice and start it anyways, because it's fantastic. I do think I'm going to put a Vorkosigan Saga, or at least Cordelias Honor is the first two, Shards of Honor, and this book. I'm going to do like a review, should you read, for it, because even if it's only 5 minutes, I just want to gush about this new sci-fi series that's been around forever that I'm falling in love with, and it's so fun. So those were highlights, for sure. And maybe probably what makes me feel the most aggressively meh about this month is I finished Bone Shard War this morning. And, like, I was rooting for this series, guys. I was rooting for it. I really liked Book 2. Book 2 was almost a 4.5 stars. It was a 4 star. It was almost a 4.5 star. But, no, I mean, this book is just really bloated. And in the acknowledgments, the author acknowledges that they've never written a last book in a series and that this was a struggle. And I don't actually think it's the worst last book in a series I've read. It's not. But, you know, it had some issues. So, one, we have the classic, oh, this third book has a time jump that the other books haven't had. Some books do this with success for me. Locklands did that. I was okay. It's kind of, you know, a stereotypical thing to do. It's like, how do I transition to where I want to be when I need to, like, have people move along? It's not a bad thing. And then we had our characters in interesting locations, so I wasn't, like, mad about it. There were some interesting locations that they were set in. But I do think there was too much going on. We had a new character introduced in the second book that I don't like. Actively dislike this character, and not in a the author wants you to hate them kind of way. Like, the author wants me to not like this character. That's easy. I don't like them in the plot. I think it distracted from more interesting things we could have spent time on, and it was not an interesting thing to spend time on. So that's one of my critiques. Another one is that one of our characters is put into a situation, and this is a hard magic system. Or at least it has a lot of rules, a lot of things that don't bend. It's based off writing commands and stuff like that. And there were times when one of our characters could have been removed from a situation by just doing very simple things. And they didn't, because the author wanted to set up a big scene at the end when things would be resolved in the specific way the author wanted it to be done. But that doesn't make sense, because that's not how it should have happened. And that bothers me. Normally these things don't bother me, but it bothered me. I messaged many people about it. I was like, what is happening? Why didn't X do this? So that was annoying. And it's fine. Just none of the emotional beats landed for me. And that's just kind of a bummer. This has so many cool things going for it. The world building is so cool. Like, I was describing to one of my friends who didn't finish the series, because I had to give them a lot of backstory to make them understand the thing that didn't work for me. And as I'm saying all these things, like, all these things are really cool. All of this sounds great, and, like, these things are cool. But I also think another detriment is that the world building reveals are cool. But then we don't always deal with the repercussions to the extent that I want to. And that's my thing with twists, right? Reveals, twists. It's not about the twist existing there. That's not enough for me. It has to then have some follow-through. We have to then deal with the repercussions of the twist for the twist to have lasting impact. And I just don't think we ever did. And we focused on other things that I don't think needed the page time that they got. This series was actually quite tight until this third book, and this book is not tight. Had some plot holes that I didn't really like, and it didn't have the character interactions that I needed to have the emotional payoff that we were given near the end. So it wasn't a bad book. Like I said, none of these books are bad. I'm just, like, underwhelmed by everything. And it's just annoying. So yeah, I will probably also have a should you read for the Bone Shard trilogy. Oh, it's called the Drowning Empire trilogy, because I still need to write notes for that. But that's the big reason why I finished it. I was literally last night texting Jess being like, I want to DNF this book. I want to, but I only have an hour and a half left. Like, and an hour and a half left of a trilogy, it's just like, oh, why not? But, like, I don't feel more complete having finished it. I just now feel like I can actually make a review video on should you read this trilogy, you know? Is that a good enough reason? I don't know. Like, I don't regret anything I read this month. I'm just sad that it wasn't balanced more. Like, I'm sad that New Sons and Barayar, those are my big ones, and that's only like 600 pages of my reading. I would love it to be more like 50% of my reading, you know? So here's hoping. June is stronger for me. I still don't not recommend any of these books. They're just not hits for me, personally. At least the ones that were 3.5 stars. 3.5 stars means it's a good book. It was just a chore for me to read. That is what that rating means to me, if you were ever curious. 3 means it's a chore and I have a lot of complaints. That's how my rating scale seems to work these days. And 4 and up are usually unconditional, like, yeah, I recommend this book. All right, so let me know what you think of these books I mentioned, any books you read, highlights, lowlights, mid books. If you just want to leave an emoji to let me know you're here. Oh, I do not. No. There's a lot of sea, waves. There's a lot of books that have to do with waves, so we're just going to go with waves. And otherwise, like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.